We got a glow up that's real for a bunch of teams. We've got a championship caliber snake draft, and it's time for some Zero Blitz. He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Zero Blitz with Frank and Fitz. Frank, I'm sitting in Phoenix, getting ready for the championship game tonight, men's college basketball. Obviously, we're going to do a fun snake draft today that's championship game themed. But before we do any of that, you in or out on all this Eclipse stuff? Because I'm just going to throw one of our bosses. I had no idea that one of our bosses, Sam, is apparently a big space nerd, because we had a meeting this morning. He spent the whole time talking about the right he has the glasses in hand in early AM to go watch them. And I think maybe I'm jaded because in Nashville, this happened, I think it was in 17. And so everybody threw these big parties, and I was the guy at the party that put the glasses on, and I was like, okay, yeah, it was dark for a few minutes. Woohoo. I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. You an Eclipse guy?
More on your side, yes. I don't think I haven't bought any special glasses. I'm not. I keep forgetting about it until somebody like you reminds me. Yeah, not a big Eclipse guy, not a big space guy, not a flat earther either. There was a funny meme about the flat Earth, Eclipse, and you can look that up on X, formerly Twitter. But yeah, not a huge Eclipse guy. More excited about this basketball game tonight than the Eclipse. I'll tell you that. What's it like out there? I know it's a football podcast, but it's a big game. This is a really, really fun game between two really good teams. What's the Final Four been like? What's the atmosphere there like? I want to know from the ground there in Phoenix. What's the experience been?
So this is my first Final Four I've gotten to cover, right? So this has been amazing. And first championship game that I'm covering in person. I've got it. I've always done this remote from studio. So to be on site is a really cool difference. But the craziest thing, and you can appreciate this whenever we see sports live, the difference for all the Zach Edey's great. I know everybody loves Zach Edey. He's fine. He's a tall, lanky dude, right? When you watch Zach Edey play in person, you look and you think, man, he's tall. When you watch Donovan Clingan, the big for Connecticut play, it's different, man. It's just different. He makes up so much ground. So standing there in person, the number of times I've been oh, he's way out of position. And in one step, all of a sudden, and his wingspan is huge. I think Clingan's going to be the key here. But also, Frank, I'm going to throw myself under the bus because I've had a traumatic life experience here in Phoenix, all right? I'm sitting courtside. I'm sitting in the second row in the media row. I'm filming the national anthem because I'm kind of a national anthem geek. Makes sense, right? I'm watching all of it go down. I'm soaking everything in. All of a sudden, I find out after I leave that Bill Murray was sitting in the row in front of me. He apparently confused his seats. He was sitting next to his son, who's a Connecticut coach. He was sitting 2 seats over in the row in front. I could have literally reached out and touched his shoulder. So I looked back at my national anthem video, and at the very end in a bucket hat, there's damn Bill Murray. And I have an SNL, part of my tattoo is Saturday Night Live. The Ghostbusters franchise is arguably my favorite movie franchise. I was a row behind one of my acting icons, right? And I totally would have gurned him. I would have absolutely been hey man, can I get a picture? I would have done it. And I didn't even know it. It's eaten me alive days later. It's eaten me alive, Frank.
How many celebrities have you taken a selfie with? I have one. I'll tell you that in a second. A bunch. I mean, you kind of were rubbing elbows with a lot of those people, so I don't know if you're impressed. But how many in your phone selfies do you have with celebrities?
I would maybe 2 or 3 total. I'm not a selfie guy. I meet people and I'm it's cool that I met them. But I think there's something for me about actors because it's the world I've never really lived in. So actors and people like that, I'm okay, that just hits different than if I
I mean, you can see Patrick Mahomes and be oh, it's Patrick Mahomes. I know people are weirded out by that because people ask me and you all the time oh my god, what's it like being around Tom Brady Super Bowl week? It's he's cool. It doesn't really blow me away. The only time it happened to me was Jordan back when he was with the Wizards. I covered a Wizards-Bucks game. That was something because you're I'm standing next to Babe Ruth. I mean, that I gotta lie. That was something. The only time I've ever gotten a selfie with any celebrity, I was in Appleton, Wisconsin before the San Francisco 49ers Green Bay Packers playoff game. This is the really cold Kaepernick game, right? The 49ers brought in Ric Flair to give a pep talk, right? And obviously, me and you, both huge 80s wrestling guys. And I go down to the bar to watch the second game the Eagles were playing. And Ric Flair is just sitting at the bar. It's just, nobody notices him. I do because I'm a nerd. And so after a while, Ric Flair walks out. I've probably told this story on another podcast. Ric Flair walks out of the bar, totally unbothered. I'm I've had a few, right? I do like drinking. I'm a Wisconsin guy. And so I follow Rick out, and he's got a security guy with him. And I'm hey, Ric Flair, awesome. Can I get a selfie? And he's totally freaking annoyed with me, right? And so he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so I have a BlackBerry at the time. I'm dating myself. I start to give my phone to a security guy, and Rick is like, he doesn't do that. You got to take a selfie or whatever. And this isn't like selfie mode with the iPhone and all that. This is like, I'm trying to line it up with the back of my phone. And it is the blurriest, most horrible picture with Ric Flair. But that is my one celebrity selfie story. Me and Ric Flair at the Paper Valley Hotel in Appleton, Wisconsin. Just me and him in a hallway because nobody noticed that maybe the greatest wrestler of all time was just sitting at the bar watching the Eagles game.
In honor of WrestleMania last night, can I tell you my Ric Flair story? So the year I was out with Game Day, I hosted a show before Game Day that was me and David Pollack and Maria Taylor together. And so they told us we were at Georgia, and they were like, hey, Rick wants to come on. So we knew all week that Ric Flair was coming up. So I was nerding out all week. I was like, this is going to be awesome, right? So like Rick comes out, and he's a big college football fan, as everybody knows, right? And he comes out with 2 custom championship belts that he had made specifically. And he hands one to Maria and he hands one to Pollock. We're all on the show together. Hands one to each of us during the break. And he's like, I'm such a fan. And he had just gotten out of the hospital. And he's like, watching you guys on Game Day. Really, like, and look, I'm hosting the pregame Game Day show. Like, he didn't know me. He didn't know me from Adam. He was very nice. We spent time talking. He was a great dude. But he handed Pollock and Maria the belts. And so I was like, I already had jealousy, right? So then we hit the break after that. It like a little commercial. And Pollock looks at the belt and he just says, I'm never going to keep this. So he turns around and just hands it to somebody in the front row. He's like, you want this thing? It was a signed custom Ric Flair belt. And he handed it to him, and I'm just looking at him, and Pollock was like, what, did you want that? And I'm like, you son of a biscuit. I mean, I just, like, yeah, Pollock robbed me of my childhood at that point. Like, could have had a custom Ric Flair championship belt. And yeah, awesome. I got nothing.
That would have been, yeah, I'd have been impressed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I would carry it everywhere I went. All right, we'll get to football now. Everybody calm down. It's the offseason. Calm down. Okay?
Right, yeah. Whatever. It's April.
This is what we're going to do today. And I think it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about the glow up because, every year we need to be reminded that, tone changes on certain teams, right? So some teams are in a much better situation today or much worse. So we're going to look at some of the changes in the tone around conversation of a team today versus a year ago. We'll look at a handful of teams. Should be fun. Before we do that, though, I want to get back to something we talked about a little bit last week because the Stefon Diggs trade, obviously, big news. Everybody felt like it was a great deal. It felt like, but then we get the breaking news that the Texans voided the last 3 years of the contract, meaning they gave up draft equity to get a 1-year lease on Stefon Diggs. Now that you know that, like, does that change the way you feel about any of that transaction?
It really does. I mean, why? Like, I don't. The one thing I will not accept, the one reason I won't accept is I've seen a lot of people like, well, the Texans want the most motivated Stefon Diggs you can get. Well, if you need to cut 3 years off a guy's contract and have a 1-year rental just to motivate a guy, then you shouldn't have made the trade. Like, you already know you got the wrong guy. I don't think that was a reason at all. I think it wanted some maybe cap flexibility going forward. Maybe this was part of the deal that Diggs wouldn't accept. Like, I don't even know. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I couldn't really think of many times when a team acquired a guy and gave up team control they really had nothing to lose here. It's all Stefon Diggs' gain. He even gets a raise this season. So can you give me a good reason? Because we're sitting here a few days after that trade. I still can't come up with in my mind why this was a good idea for the Houston Texans.
No, and what blows my mind is you gave up draft equity for somebody that you're now acknowledging. Like, if the argument is, well, they got to get the best out of him, then why did you trade?
That's stupid. That's
like,
stupid.
That just doesn't make any sense.
Then you got the wrong guy. Like, don't do it.
I think this is a huge benefit for them this season. I really do. But I do think it's also fair to look at the equity that they've given up. And at some point, we're going to ask real questions about, was it worth it to take a 1-year lease on it? Not because of the money. I don't care about the money. And it's just because you gave up the draft at capital in a wide receiver deep draft. I just think it's a bit interesting to see this move from the Texans. And it's rare, to your point, to see a team do something that basically only benefits the player. Like, there is no benefit to the Texans. So that's just rare in today's world.
Like, maybe you could, I've seen the argument that maybe you could re-sign him at a better cap space or, better cap figure, his age and all that. I still say, well, all that could have been done. I don't. Diggs' agent and Diggs must have been like, really? Oh, okay, yeah. Hit free agency again at 31. That ain't a bad deal. Let's do that. So yeah, you're right. It's very, very rare to see such a one-sided player-friendly deal here, but that's what it is. I mean, Texans had some reason for it, and I don't know. It changed my opinion of the trade. I was like, okay, I can see the trade from the Texans side. I don't love it, honestly. I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go forward in this offseason, because Diggs didn't look like the same guy in the second half last year. I mean, he just wasn't. He was a very average receiver for the second half of last season. And now you add on that, like, you traded a second round pick, which is just going to be a 1-year rental, basically, unless you can re-sign him. And that's great if you do. It just makes me wonder, really, was this worth it for the Texans? I mean, I guess if they win a Super Bowl this year, sure, who cares? But I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen for them. And when you're out of Diggs for a second round pick, and you could get great receivers in the second round now. Like, it's unbelievable how deep this receiver draft class is after we've seen deep receiver classes, kind of 2 of the past 3 years as well. So don't know. I just don't get this move. I can't lie. I don't get this move contractually from the Texans side of it.
So another big move this week, the Panthers, they went out and they're just handing out Scrooge McDuck money at this point. Derrick Brown gets a 4-year, $96 million extension, $63 million of it guaranteed. I think the thing that I would say to everybody here is start to keep an eye on interior defensive line in the draft. Because what have we seen this offseason that, like, guys that play well at that position are going to get paid well? I think we need to change some of the way our tone happens around the draft conversation at every position now. The real of it is, if you have an elite insert position here, wide receiver, interior defensive lineman, edge rusher, quarterback, you're going to have to pay that guy. I think we just need to start acknowledging that more and more there is value in the current cycle for the draft, because if you are looking for a defensive lineman that can make a difference, you're going to have to spend $100 million. Like, that's just the new cap, the new money. It's there. Teams are going to have to draft well, because Derrick Brown is certainly a very good player, but a $96 million extension speaks to the value of the position at the interior defensive line.
I'll be honest, I did have sticker shock here. And I can't lie, this is a safe space, right? I can admit this to you. I was like, has Derrick Brown really been that good? And I went and studied. It's going to shock you here, even though I watch every game. A defensive tackle for a 1-15 team wasn't really high on my radar last year. So I didn't realize how dominant Derrick Brown was against a run. Like, he is a dominant run defender. And I know that. I knew he was good. I know he's great. He doesn't really generate any sacks from the interior, which is really the value in the NFL. So I do wonder, is a guy with, I believe, 7 career sacks, 8 career sacks, somewhere in there, is he worth $96 million in the modern game? Where, but then again, he is probably the premier interior run stopper in the NFL right now among defensive linemen. So I guess it is. And, they're still not paying Bryce that much. So you got extra money, and not like Tepper worries about cutting a check. So I guess I get it from the Panthers. Sign your own guys, sends a good message. They don't have many guys are paying because they've been so bad. But I did have sticker shock with Derrick Brown, where I was like, 96 million? Really? Derrick Brown? I guess I get it, but I don't know that I'm paying 96 million for a guy who's going to get 2 sacks in a season.
This is where the Panthers are damned if they do and damned if they don't, because certainly paying a player that's very good makes a ton of sense. But that very good player helped lead you to 1 win. Like, what do you do with that information, right? So I have felt this to my core as a Raiders fan, watching Max Crosby and Devontae Adams, who are very good players. They're great players. They're epic players, fine. But it hasn't led to a ton of wins on the field. So then there's always this great debate of how do you weigh who to pay and when to pay them when your team overall just sucks. So the Panthers are a barrel of trash, but they don't fix that by not re-signing the teams, the players that they need to re-sign. So, I think this is a smart move to keep talented players, but also a very talented player, to your point, was part of a very bad football team. So that has to be part of the context. I don't know the right answer. I just know that, if you're Derrick Brown, you're very happy. If you're the Panthers, you kept one of your own. But if you're a Panthers fan, it doesn't move the needle. It doesn't change the way you feel about your team next year. You're still absolutely climbing Mount Everest, and you're not in good shape. Like, it just doesn't feel like that's going to help the mountain climb at all.
Yeah. Other than, again, you want to send the message, we're going to reward our good players. We're going to draft and develop. When you're gonna get paid at the end if you do things the right way. The Brian Burns debacle probably soured a lot of people on the Panthers for good reason. So I guess there's some intangible benefit to paying Derrick Brown like this. And he's a good player. Like, I'm not trying to downgrade Derrick Brown. It's just a lot of money, again, for a guy in a pass-heavy league who doesn't really disrupt the passer that much. It's a lot of money to be paying for an interior lineman who, again, great against the run, but not exactly Aaron Donald here. Like Christian Wilkins is a good example. The Raiders paid him $110 million, obviously, had to pay him a little more because he's on the open market. I'd rather have Christian Wilkins than Derrick Brown because Christian Wilkins does everything and is a factor in the pass game too, 9 sacks last season. So if you're giving me the choice between those two players, I'd probably pick Christian Wilkins. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just like in the modern game a guy who can also rush a passer. But again, hey, if you're going to bring one skill to the table, be the best in the league at it. And Derrick.
All right, so it is time. When we come back, we're going to break down the glow up or the glow down. We're going to take a look at where the conversation was for some of these teams a year ago versus where it is now, and see maybe if we can get a little context about where we are currently for some of these teams. Frank, I keep thinking back to school. Was there a summer where, like, all of a sudden you get, like, because I was a fat kid. Right? I was a fat kid growing up. We all, I've always embraced that fat kid playing the violin. I grew almost a foot in the summer between 8th and 9th grade. In that 3 months, I grew almost a foot.
Wow.
So I went from being a fat kid to a skinny kid. Like, you could see my ribs. And nothing changed. Literally nothing. The way I ate didn't change. Nothing changed. It was my glow up year. Well, but I don't know if that's glow up. I went from being fat to suddenly being like scrawny and nerdy. So I don't think I necessarily go up, but at least, changed one thing. Was there a year for Frank Schwab where he came in and all of a sudden it was like, wow, I am now the Schwabi? Did we go from Frankie to Schwabi?
No, nothing. It just was a steady climb. By the way, I've always interested because this is a college basketball podcast now. Like David Robinson, isn't the story that he grew like 9 inches after he committed to Navy, and that's why he was at Navy? He didn't really fit in the submarines anymore and stuff, but he was this great, obviously one of the great centers of all time, 7'1". He goes, like, Navy thinks they're getting some 6'3" guy. Hey, great, he could play a little bit of point forward or whatever. Now it's like Navy, the Naval Academy has one of the dominant centers of all time. You can go I'll look that up later because it's been 30 years and my memory's bad. But no, just steady for. We didn't grow a foot in a summer. Wow, that's great. If you would have grown another foot, you could have been David Robinson.
Yeah. Instead, all I did, I grew tall enough to still be short. I don't know how that works. But like, we all know what it was like the first day of summer. Like, especially like kids, follow me here. There was a world where there was no internet. Like, I just want to remind everybody, this will shake Stone, our producer extraordinaire, to his core. But like, because my family was broke, we didn't have the means for like a computer. So in high school, I typed my papers on a typewriter. Let's not get it twisted. Okay. Like, I'm just old.
With the whiteout stuff?
Yeah. I'm just old enough that, like, I was right on the curve. I'd never been on the internet till I went to college, right? So, the concept, you didn't, in the summer, sometimes you would go 3 months and not see some of your classmates at all, right? Like, and so all of a sudden,
there's no Instagram. I wasn't on Instagram seeing my classmates grow foot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that didn't happen.
And then there was always like one girl that came in after the summer, and you were like, I'm now in love. I'm madly in love. But there were also the opposite. There were some people that were like, ooh, what in the hell happened to him over the course of the summer? So we're kind of applying that right now to the NFL logic with the glow up or down. So we're going to look at how we thought about some teams a year ago versus how we do now and figure out, like, is it 8th grade crush level or is it runaway screaming level? We'll kind of figure this out. So as we look at the glow up and the glow down, we're going to pick some different teams to take a look at. Good sir, Frank, we were just talking about the Texans, and now you've made it official that you hate the Stefon Diggs move. I'm just putting that in so that they can clip that. You've made it official. But let's be honest, the glow up, I remember last year sitting on the set for an NFL draft show talking about how the Texans could have the first pick for another year. Yeah. Like, this was a terrible, a year ago right now, it was nobody wanted to coach there. They don't have a quarterback. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're going to be bad for the next 10 years. And now, I mean, this is a glow up, right, brother? Like, this is a glow up of epic proportions.
The Houston Texans are the epitome of giving hope to every other bad NFL team right now, because I went back and looked at my power rankings from last August. I had the Texans 31st, and the only reason they weren't 32nd is because Kyler Murray was hurt. So I put Arizona 32, thinking maybe they don't even have Kyler Murray all year, and they're going to start Colt McCoy or whoever the flavor of the month was right then. The Houston Texans turned things around so dramatically. It's just incredible. They went from perhaps the worst team in the NFL for a couple of years running, too, to a serious Super Bowl contender. And every single team looks at that and says, maybe if we get lucky. Now, there was a funny tweet last week where somebody said, hey, every team's going to copy what the Texans did. And everybody kind of dunked on it and said, yeah, of course, if you get the greatest rookie quarterback in NFL history and a coach who should have been coach of the year, maybe a DeMeco Ryans, you could turn things around too. It's not that easy, but the point is, if the Texans could do it, you can too. Yeah, you need to hit some grand slams. I get that. But if you are a team like the Commanders, let's say, and you're like, man, maybe if our quarterback, whoever we drafted to, maybe not CJ Stroud, because that's shooting for the stars, but maybe CJ Stroud light, maybe one of those Burrow, Herbert, Cam Newton type of rookies, and we hit the right coach with Dan Quinn, maybe we can go to the moon too. And next year, a year from now, we're talking about the Commanders as a Super Bowl contender. And that sounds weird when you say it, but it happened to the Texans. Why can't it happen to the Commanders? Why can't it happen to the Patriots? Why every single team in kind of the top 10 of the draft looks at the Texans and says, hey, you can turn things around in 1 year in the NFL. That's why the NFL is beautiful. Every fan base looks and says, we are just a couple grand slams away from getting back in this game. I know it's hard to hit those grand slams, but it's possible. Unlike the NBA, look, if you're a bad NBA team right now, if you're a Toronto Raptors, you're not thinking next year we're going to be an NBA title contender. It doesn't work that way in that league. The NFL, you could turn things around really fast.
The Texans are a celebrity that took Ozempic and then came back and tried to lie about it. Like, just stand up and be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we got lucky. And we hit a home run. That 100%.
Got lucky that Stroud's even there. Like, the Panthers could have drafted CJ Stroud, and then I'm sure the Texans would have drafted Bryce, right? Like, I don't know, but they could be in a much different boat right now. Or I've always said, and you could go back to my team preview last year with the Texans, I am fascinated by the whole DeMeco Ryans thing, because if DeMeco Ryans is drafted by the Giants at the end of the first round of that draft, I don't think DeMeco Ryans is Houston's coach. DeMeco Ryans was the hot name, and the only reason he wanted to go to that dumpster fire back then of an organization was because he was like, I have such great feelings about my time in Houston. I'm a legend here. I'm going to come back and save the franchise. He doesn't have those feelings if some other team drafts him. They don't get DeMeco Ryans. They're not in this spot. It's crazy, this sliding doors thing with DeMeco Ryans. All right,
so that's the Bills. Let's take, that's the Texans. Let's move over to the Bills because this is a little bit of the opposite. Right now, it was, man, this is the year. They're going to be able to get over the hump. And then even going into the season, I felt like I was arguing with people. There were some people that thought the Bills were going to take a huge step back. I'll say that. I was arguing loudly, tell me where, right? Because to me, they still felt like they were going to be a playoff team. They still felt like they were going to be right in contention. Turns out I was right. Like, hey, for all the difficulties of the season, let's not get it twisted. They hosted the Chiefs in Buffalo, right? Like, everything lined up in a way where I was like, see, I'm going to look smart about the Bills. I'm totally out at this point on the Bills being able to continually do this, because at some point, what you do, and this is what the Chiefs are doing, you put more and more and more on your young quarterback that you've paid. And this is what I said on Inside Coverage. It's like a teeter-totter, right? Like, at first, everybody else is supposed to elevate the quarterback, and then boom, it moves and the quarterback elevates everybody else. I think the Bills right now have too many glaring holes on their roster all across the board, and they're asking a ton from Josh Allen at this point. And I don't know if any of that leads to better than Mahomes. And since the only expectation that seems to be leveled out for the Bills is Super Bowls, they're not in that conversation to me. So I think the Bills have gone from that sort of team that a year ago I was saying, hey, why not Buffalo? To now I'm saying, man, maybe a wild card team, maybe.
Yeah, I think both of us picked Buffalo preseason as our Super Bowl pick. And they had a weird season where they were like basically had one foot in their grave as far as their playoff chances go, and then rallied, won the AFC East. You miss a field goal against the Chiefs. You're that close to I believe, tying that game at that point. And yeah, they were contenders, but I don't put them in that bucket either. There's too many issues they're going to have to deal with. Who's their number one receiver right now? Khalil Shakir? Like, they're going to draft somebody, but I don't know. I don't know that he can pull off this magic act where they get a rookie Odell Beckham type of impact, or Justin Jefferson or somebody like that. It's a tough ask. There are a lot of holes on this roster all of a sudden. I don't think they're a bad team. Here, I think this is a bigger question. Yes, I look at them much differently than I did 1 year ago. Do you think their Super Bowl window is closed? Because I push back on that. I say no. Their Super Bowl window might not be open in 2024, but it's still open. They're going to have to retool. They're going to have to figure out how to replace Diggs and how to get a decent amount of weapons for Josh Allen at the wideout position. But I don't think their window's closed because they have an elite quarterback at 27 years old. They're going to ask him to do too much, but they can still win the AFC East this year. They're not bad, but what do you say? Do you think our Super Bowl window is completely closed? I don't, but I understand people who say it's closed. You're paying your quarterback $80 billion a year. It's hard to build a team that way. Where do you stand on the whole Super Bowl window with the Bills?
I think when you have a great quarterback, your Super Bowl window is never closed. But I do think that they're much closer right now to being the Steelers with Big Ben than they were to being, let's say, the Patriots with Brady, right? Like, you're going to have to continually retool this, and you're going to have to find the right guys. And to your point, anytime a key position, and a wide receiver is a key position in the modern NFL, anytime a key position, your answer is, well, we're just going to draft one. That's like saying, we're just going to go buy scratch-off lottery tickets, and I'm sure we'll be able to afford gas getting home. Like, it might work, and it works for some teams, but there are so many draft busts all the time.
Just because you draft a guy in the first round doesn't matter. Yeah, you just because you draft a guy in the first round. You're not drafting Marvin Harrison, probably. God bless the Bills if they get him, but you're probably drafting after the top three, right? Like, once those top three guys are gone, it's kind of you might get Justin Jefferson. You might get Quentin Johnston. It's just... It's hard. It's hard to rely on any rookie to be, here's the piece of our puzzle we need. No, it usually doesn't work that way in the NFL.
But I do think that Josh Allen is incredible. I mean, whenever I say you've got an incredible quarterback, to me, that means you always have a chance. I won't say their window's closed, but man, it does feel like they're in a rebrand right now, and they got to figure that out quickly. By the way, should note they signed La'el Collins 1 year, $6.25 million. That doesn't, I don't know if that moves the needle for you. It doesn't really move the needle for me. He's a serviceable offensive lineman that his name is better than his reputation. Agreed. All right, so let's go to the opposite. Now, I feel like we're going back and forth here. I like this little dance here. All right, so you want to talk about the pickleball glow up? Yeah, you want to talk about the Rams being a glow up? My God, because a year ago right now, remember, even pre-draft, it was, well, there are rumblings that McVay might retire and doesn't want to do this anymore, and he's burnt out, and Aaron Donald's going to leave. Well, he has now, but when you think about where we were a year ago, it felt like the Rams were in complete disarray, and then all year, everybody was stunned by how well it came together. So the conversation's definitely changed, right?
I have a good friend, Rams fan, we talk Rams football all the time, and he thought the lock of the century was Rams under 7.5 wins last year. I was like, hey, buddy, I bet that. Okay. And he's like, I didn't know. Nobody knew. I thought that the Rams could have been some 3 or 4 win team last year. I really did. You looked at that roster, you're like, oh God, this is bad. Like, where's the depth? But they developed some guys hit for them. And you kind of forget that we have a really good quarterback like Matthew Stafford. And I thought Stafford was awesome last year. I thought he played some of his best football last year. And that's weird to say about a guy who won a Super Bowl ring. But last year, I was more impressed with Stafford than probably any time in his career. Puka was obviously up to the moon type of, he was that lottery scratch-off ticket where you're like, oh my God, I just won. You got Puka Nacua in the 5th round. Good for you. Now the Aaron Donald thing changes. Like, you take maybe the greatest defensive player of all time out of your defensive line. That does hurt things, but I kind of to the point where it's like, well, I just need to trust that McVay's never going to be bad. He's such a good coach. Stafford's such a good player. Nacua obviously changes the math on their offense. Yeah, much different feeling about the Rams right now, even without Aaron Donald, than a year ago when you were just like, oh my God, the Rams might be, top 3-4 pick. I really thought that was their floor. They exceeded that tremendously. Good for them, and it was a fun playoff ride for them. And I think the future's really bright. I think they're in a position where even without Aaron Donald, they're going to be able to stay competitive most years. And you're going to have your spike years where you stay healthy and you just have a really good team. Feeling a lot different about the Rams than I did.
I feel like Sean McVay is now in a category, and hear me out on the whole thing before anybody reacts to this. He's now in the category of Bill Belichick in the sense that you get benefit of the doubt for certain things. And at this point, I'm giving Sean McVay benefit of the doubt from now on that no matter what his pieces are, he knows how to play chess better than anybody. And if you ever talk to somebody that's a competitive chess player, they'll tell you that sometimes when they're practicing, they take away massive pieces because they want to play shorthanded from the time the game begins so that they can get better at their strategy, right? I think what we've learned is that Sean McVay is a grandmaster. You can take away pieces and he's still going to figure out a way to beat you. So I'm done saying that the Rams have any issues offensively as long as Sean McVay is their head coach because he knows what he's doing. Will replacing Aaron Donald be difficult? Yes, but you're right. The tone has changed wildly. Let me give you one. This one's a little tougher. right? Because there is one team that we are handling with kid gloves right now. And this is a tradition. Now, last year, I think we were all in on them. This year, they're not getting a lot of hate. Everybody gives the benefit of the doubt all of a sudden, and it's because of one player. When I say Bengals and Joe Burrow, all I'm saying, Frank, is that Joe Burrow is injury prone. And I don't know why we're not allowed to say that out loud. If Lamar Jackson had lost as many seasons as Joe Burrow had lost to injury, we would say, well, he's injury prone. Like any quarterback that misses massive chunks of multiple seasons usually gets the label injury prone. Any quarterback that every time we're in the preseason, we're like, not sure what the availability is going to be like. He's just recovering from this. We get the injury prone. Like we hear that all the time. We refuse to say that with the Bengals. And so now you have a Bengals team that's lost their offensive coordinator. He's the head coach of the Titans. And I still feel like we're handling the Bengals with kid gloves. I can't figure if this is a glow up or if we're like, I can't tell if this is Mean Girls and we're just afraid to say anything about the Bengals. I don't know where we are in Cincinnati.
I'll say this, that a year ago now, we were sitting here and you would have asked me, are the Bengals Super Bowl contender? Why are you even asking me? Of course they are. Everybody knows the Bengals are a Super Bowl contender. Quit wasting my time. Now it's like, I don't really know. Really tough division. Seems like the Ravens passed them last year. Maybe they fall back. But there's so much competition in the AFC. And you have the whole T. Higgins situation, which is going to be uncomfortable all year.
Do you think he gets traded? Any chance draft night that they're just like?
I think that they're going to listen, right? You have to. Like when you got a guy who next year we're not resigning this guy. You want to keep him to make one more run with the whole that triplets right there with Chase, Higgins, Burrow. But if somebody calls you with a great offer and you're desperate, like it's hard to find a receiver. The Buffalo Bills call you. And they just throw the moon at you. You at least have to think about it, right? Like, this is maybe better for our future. Also, an underrated thing for them is losing DJ Reader out of the middle of their defensive line. They could not stop the run late last season. Like, I mean, once DJ got hurt and he went to the Lions, I thought it was a great signing, even coming off the quad injury. I think this defense took a little bit of a step back. Like you said, Burrow, like we do have to ask that question. I mean, can he stay healthy? I mean, it's been a fluke injury, so I think he's going to be fine. We talked about Matthew Stafford being injury prone earlier in his career. Then he became kind of an Iron Man. So sometimes just flukes. Sometimes you just catch fluky injuries. Christian McCaffrey, same way. He caught a couple fluky injuries. He's not injury prone. He's an Iron Man. He's a dude that could carry the ball just about every play 97% of the snaps, but he got the term injury prone because of a couple of fluke injuries. I think that's the bucket Burrow's in, or he's not going to be injured his whole career as long as he catches some injury luck. But we do have to ask the question, right? Like, so I think that's on the table. I just, this team being a year older, like you said, we underrate losing coordinators. That did happen, even though Zach is obviously an offensive minded coach. I don't know. If you ask me this year, are the Bengals Super Bowl contender? I have to pause. I guess if Burrow stays healthy, sure. And if T is happy, sure. But I'm not as confident about that as I was a year ago.
You know me and my and top shelf, my liquor analogies. Would you put this point, would you put the Bengals on the same shelf as the Chiefs? I don't know that I can do that.
I can't. Nope. And now fairly, do you put anybody else on the Chiefs? Like, I mean, that is the Louis the 13th, right? Yeah. Like the Chiefs are almost a shelf on their own. You build that shelf, right? Like the Chiefs are up here until somebody drinks them all and we have to move on to our second tier of liquor. But I think the Bengals, I don't even know if they're on a second shelf right now. Like that non-Chief shelf of, whatever contenders you want to put out there, the 49ers, whatnot. I don't know. I just don't know. They might be on the Bullet Bourbon, not the Pappy necessarily, not the Blantons, but you might have the Bullet, Knob Creek, whatever. That really, I could just go on about bourbon and the Cincinnati Bengals.
I love the fact that Frank has made Bullet and for me, I'm like, when I go in and order an old fashioned, I'm like, I'll take it with Bullet, feeling like that makes me fancy. I'm like, I'll have Bullet, and Frank's like, well, I mean, it's Bullet. No, you're 1,000% right. I love everything about this. By the way, the Chiefs, I've decided, are like a vineyard where the weather was bad, the grapes were wrong, everything was terrible. There was no way there should have been good wine. And then you poured out the red and somebody was like, oh my God, this is delicious wine. Still, I don't know how they do it. Doesn't matter what they face, they somehow get a perfect bottle of wine. All right. So talk about change in tone, particularly from a year ago. Let's move to the Chicago Bears. And I think the Bears are interesting because I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give us a little grace in this conversation. I'm going to allow Caleb Williams as a Bear to be part of this conversation. It's the worst kept secret. He's going to be the number one pick, right? So it's interesting to where we were a year ago with, hey, we just need to see what we have and maybe we can make it work with Justin Fields, versus now when it feels like a lot of those guys last year that they needed to develop sort of have. And a lot of the money that they've spent seems to be smart. And now they're about to, like, Caleb Williams is going into a much better situation than Justin Fields had last year. So the tone has definitely changed.
100%. I went back and looked again. My power rankings from last summer when I did the team previews, I had the Bears 30th, and I knew I was low. I just, it's one of those, I do the rankings, I do the previews, and sometimes you're just like, this is wrong, but whatever. They had the first pick of the draft that year. I can't put them too higher than 30th, but I know the ceiling's a lot higher. I think the Bears, I'm probably going to be picking them to make a playoffs this year. So you go from me thinking last August that they were the 30th best team in the NFL to one of the top 14 this year. And I think it just keeps growing and growing for them. I like what they've done around the quarterback position. And like you said, we had no idea, maybe we should have, that the Panthers were going to be so bad that the Bears were going to be picking first overall and get Caleb Williams. It kind of reset the franchise that way. A lot of questions about Justin Fields, who just, I mean, as much as I like Justin Fields, I really do. I feel like I'm on an island almost anymore. Justin Fields was traded just for a 6th-round pick. Like, that's the kind of quarterback they had. I know there's a lot of nuances there, but go with me here. If Justin Fields was a superstar we thought, he wouldn't have gone for a 6th-round pick. You get to reset with Caleb Williams, who is this uber prospect everybody likes. Everybody's obvious number one in this draft. Not Nate Tice, he's got Drake May number one, and I respect that. But most people think that Caleb is this MVP type of ceiling. A quarterback for the Bears completely changes their outlook. I don't think down the road, I think this year, I think that if that's an upgraded quarterback, they added Keenan Allen. They've added guys like Kevin Byard, a really good veteran who I like. They just keep upgrading, have the 9th pick of the draft. They're going to draft another impact guy or trade down and get a bunch of picks. Bears are in much better shape than they were a year ago. Had a good season after a rough start. The Bears are kind of the Texans light of, you could turn this thing around in a year. Let's not forget, the Panthers did pick first in 2023, but that was a Bears pick. They just traded it. The Bears have gone from owning the first pick of the draft to, I think they're going to make the playoffs in 12 months' time.
Can I be a hot take guy for a second? I'm going to regret this.
Absolutely, please. I'm ready.
Are we in a situation where the NFC North next year? Let me rephrase this. I think we're in a situation where the NFC North has a chance to be the toughest division in football next year. Like, the Lions are not going to.
The Vikings might be gone.
You can have one. You can have one turd in the punch bowl, but the rest of the punch is still pretty good, right? Like, that's a terrible analogy, but here.
Yes. Oh, man. That's your hot take now. No, I'm not going to that.
I'm just loving the thought of being at the party and being like, hey, look, no, just push the turd off to the side.
There was just one turd in the punch bowl. Just drink around it.
The rest of it. I love it. Like, I can also picture Stone, our producer, sitting there, like, he's got his notes going. He's like, oh, this is a good take. And then I get to turd in the punch bowl, and he's like, no, there's no way I can use any of this now. Let me say it this way. Great divisions sometimes have a bad team, and that's okay. I don't think the Vikings are going to be very good. I think the Vikings are going to be in rebuild mode. We'll get to Minnesota, but I do think the Packers look like a deep playoff run type team right now as their young talent continues to develop and they're way ahead of schedule. The Lions aren't going anywhere. Like, the Lions are going to consistently be very good.
Better. Lions got better, I think.
And I'm with you. I think the Bears are just poised to make a leap. So 3 of these 4 teams are really, really good. Like, I think there's a real shot that a laughing stock of a division going into last year, you talk about a glow up, the entire division last year wasn't getting near the love it gets now. And I think there's room for that to even get bigger and louder as we get ready for this season. Like, after the draft, depending on what happens with Minnesota, you can't tell me if Minnesota trades up and lands their quarterback of the future that somebody somewhere isn't going to justify that, O'Connell as a coach can get the most out of JJ and all of a sudden we're back in on them.
Yeah, I'd pick the AFC North if you're asking me today. What's the best division? Just because they're really good from 1 to 4. I'm high on the Browns. Obviously, the Ravens are great. But you make a great case, too. The NFC North, I thought, when I did winners and losers a few weeks ago on, what teams did the best in free agency, I had all 3 of those NFC North teams. I thought all 3 of them did a great job this offseason. That's going to be a really, really fun division. And The Lions, one of those teams that was a quarter away from the Super Bowl, they got better, but I can't tell you for sure they're going to win that division. I think they will, but they're going to have competition. That division is going to be awesome.
And Jordan Love takes a leap forward. Let's do the rest of this division right now, since we're talking about it anyway. Let's look at the Packers real quick, because a year ago it was, what in the hell are they doing? And now it is so clear that Green Bay won the trade with the Jets. It is so clear that Green Bay had faith in their guy. And you know what? Green Bay deserves so much credit for shutting off all the outside noise, saying, we don't give a damn what y'all think. We see every single day. And it's a reminder to fans that at some point, all you can do, as tough as this is as a fan, is trust that your organization's GM and head coach that see every day of practice, more than just the games, they see every day of practice, they see every day in the meeting rooms, they see every day in the weight room. You got to trust that they have some level of intelligence to that we simply can't have, because we don't have the same level of access to see all of that. Green Bay is living, eating, breathing proof that they trusted their process, much like the Bills did early on with Josh Allen. When everybody had something to say about him, they didn't care. The Packers have done the same thing with Jordan Love. And you think about where the Packers are right now. Like, tone has changed wildly. And it to me, it's a fun, you want a pizza bet for a Super Bowl team? Why not take a flyer on the Packers?
Absolutely. I think they had a good offseason. I think you think back to a year ago when we were talking about the Packers. Well, they're going into the great unknown now. In the offseason, I was high on the Packers. I thought they were a playoff team. I thought they're going to be very good, much better than anybody. But I'll admit, I gave up on them. Middle of the season, after they played your Raiders, I was like, we talked on the Blitz. Jordan Love ain't the dude. I was wrong. I mean, Jordan Love had a great second half of the season, but they weren't to the point. Like, we could even take this a step further. We're talking about teams we thought differently a year ago than right now. With 10 games left in their season, Brian Gutekunst, their general manager, came out and said, it's a big 10 games for Jordan Love. It wasn't like he came out guns blazing and was like, oh my God, this is the next Aaron Rodgers. There were serious questions about him at midseason. Even the Packers kind of expressed that, hey, we need to know where we're going with the future. I think we'll see. I mean, I'm going to be a little more skeptical than everybody else on Jordan Love. Did look great late in the season, but it is a half season sample size we're talking about. But that half season was excellent. Looked good in the playoffs. Yeah, the entire conversation about the Packers changed over those last 2 months when Jordan Love just balled out and just became, the Packers got another franchise quarterback. It's kind of crazy the way the narrative changed on them, and really, honestly, in about 2 months of games.
You're totally right, and measured and smart, borderline brilliant in what you're saying about it's half a season. The only counter to that I would give, because you're right, is would we attack our conversation about Jordan Love with the same level of grace if it had only been half a season of bad? You know what I mean? Like, the world explodes when somebody sucks for half a season. So I'm allowing the world to explode positively when they're good for half a season. But I think you're very right that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. The Vikings, I think the Vikings are in rebuild mode, right? I think that's the only fair thing. But they remained competitive last year with, some of the worst quarterback play you could possibly imagine, and guys that we didn't even realize were still in the NFL coming in and playing. So I do have faith in this coaching staff to be able to maximize what they have. But man, Minnesota, you got to feel like they're going to try and move up to get a quarterback, and then you better hope that quarterback, when they move up, is absolutely brilliant.
I mean, is Kevin O'Connell Sean McVay? I mean, they're close friends, and we just talked about, hey, you give Sean McVay half the pieces on the chessboard, and he's still going to find out a way to beat you because he's a grandmaster. I'm not saying Kevin O'Connell's in that class yet, but I respect him a lot as a coach. I like him. I think he can do more with less, and that's a sign of a great coach, like you talked about last year. He had Dobbs ready to go, telling him plays in his earpiece, which is one of the great stories of last NFL season, and he balls out against Atlanta and gets them a win. I think we deserve to give Kevin O'Connell the benefit of the doubt. He gets the most out of his guys, and if they do get a rookie who comes in, plays really well right away, maybe the Vikings are going to be better than I think. But we sit here until we see what their draft plan is and if they can execute it, and if they can. You need somebody to dance with, right? I know they got the extra first round pick, but you still need somebody to want to trade with you. We'll see how we feel in a few weeks. But as we sit here right now, last year it was like Vikings coming off maybe a lucky division title, but still a division title. I think it won 13 games. To this right now, where we're saying if they don't figure out this quarterback situation, you're in for a season of Sam Darnold in the toughest division of football. It could get scary for them. The narrative on them has changed a lot in the past year. But I'm keeping my mind open to it being a 2023 Rams situation where a great coach just gets the most out of the roster.
All right, so chance for mea culpa here. Maybe a chance for a difference. I don't know. The Jags were your number one seed sleeper pick last year, and but last year I think most of us were saying, look, the Jags are about to take that leap. They're about to get on that same tier. They're about to be up on that Pappy level. They're not Bullet. They're going to be Pappy. And instead, they were like a half a bottle of Jack that's been left outside all day, and it's there, and it's better than nothing. Like I don't know what to think of the Jags and their inability to sort of break through.
I think if you're a Jags fan, you look at the Houston Texans and you say, that should have been us. Why isn't that us? Our quarterback was supposed to go to the moon last year. I had Trevor Lawrence MVP vets. I think I picked him before the season to win MVP. I ain't picking him now. I wonder if Trevor Lawrence is really the guy. He's been so up and down. He's shown us flashes of brilliance, but he's also shown us a lot of bad games and missed throws. And is this guy really who we thought he was coming out of Clemson? And now I have so many more questions about Trevor Lawrence, and that kind of just trickles down to the whole team construct. They blew the division last year. The Texans have far surpassed them as a team you're really excited about in that division. Maybe the Colts have, because if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, he's a playmaker and they got good pieces around him. I could see I could go from the Jaguars, me touting them as a surprise number one seed in the AFC, mostly because of their schedule, to this year being the third best team in that division. Like, why not? I just was so unimpressed with them last year. So lukewarm on how they finished. And now I'm just kind of like, I don't know what to make of Trevor Lawrence. What do you make of Trevor Lawrence? He seemed like he's going to be a top 5 quarterback coming into this year. If you would have told me a year ago, hey, we're going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence the same way we talk about Burrow and maybe not Mahomes, but that tier of these are the top shot, the Pappy quarterbacks. I would have put Trevor Lawrence on that tier. You could see the development coming, and it just didn't happen. He just hit a wall. And now we're saying, do the Jaguars give him a big extension? Is he really the guy? I think last year really, really damaged Trevor Lawrence as far as our perception of him as a quarterback.
Look, I'm going to go a step farther. Earlier, I said organizations know what they have in practices and meetings. The Packers weren't afraid to give Jordan Love that shot because they saw it every day. What have we seen? We've seen Dak Prescott, for example, get a massive mega contract when he was still recovering from an injury. We just saw the Falcons give how much money to Kirk Cousins coming off of an Achilles injury. I've seen so many Trevor Lawrence apologists come in, and Jags fans come at me every time I question Trevor Lawrence, saying, well, he's been hurt and you don't understand the full context of it. Okay, fine. As somebody that was as big a supporter of Trevor Lawrence as anybody coming out, this is my question to Jags fans and to the Jags organization. If the rest of us don't know what we're talking about, why haven't you done a deep deal with Trevor Lawrence? Why isn't there a mega contract? Because you do see him every day, because you do know the quarterback. You see him in practice. You see him in meetings. You see what he's fully capable of. For any Jags fan or Jags apologist that wants to come at anybody saying, yeah, but look at all of the variables around him. Variables around quarterbacks don't prevent them from getting paid. Justin Herbert hasn't won at the level the Chargers expected. He's still got a mega contract. I think it speaks volumes to the fact that there hasn't been any reporting of any sort of action towards a contract from Trevor Lawrence. That to me speaks to what the Jags see behind the scenes, not just to what we see on the field. So the fact that we're sitting here and we don't know, and the fact that nobody seems to know, I think is a statement. And now all of a sudden you're going into a prove it year with the Jags and Trevor Lawrence. It's stunning to me. The wheels have fallen off on the perception of the Jags absolutely this year. And I think you're right. I think they could find their way to third. I think they could even be last in their division at this point. I mean, the money that's been invested for other teams in that division.
Titans are going to be garbage.
It's our annual Titans argument now.
If they finish behind the Titans, then yeah, there definitely needs to be a reset in Jacksonville. I'll tell you that.
The Titans are spending money. They're spending money. Okay.
Yeah, they do. They have maybe not in the right spots, but it's one of those things where, every August I do these are the 10 guys facing a make or break season in the NFL this year, because we get those guys every year. There's nobody even close to Trevor Lawrence. We could be talking about him a year from now as, hey, actually he was the star we thought. And the second half of the 2022 season when he was awesome, that ended up being who he is full time. And now he's getting $57 million a year from the Jaguars. Or we could be like, what in the heck did the Jaguars do? They can't pay this guy. The range of outcomes is really, really wide for Trevor Lawrence. I hope he develops. I want to see star quarterbacks in the NFL. I want to see Trevor Lawrence be a stud. but I just don't know where the story's going.
I think I said when he got drafted that the organization would fail him before he would fail the organization, because I believe he's a superstar quarterback. That has not been unlocked. I think it is fair to also say everything we thought we saw from Trevor Lawrence has not yet been unlocked the way we thought it would. All right, let's move to the Seahawks, who every year we just get benefit of the doubt because Pete Carroll, and now it's like, well, got to swallow that whistle. Can't do that anymore. Like, where are you on Seattle? Where I think, I just think at this point it's just a massive unknown. The Seahawks have gone from being a known to an unknown. Maybe that's the glow down for them.
Yeah, I mean, I always made fun of the Seahawks under Pete Carroll for so many years for doing things so against the book, but it always worked. They were the guy at the blackjack table hitting on 18 and hitting a 3. Like, that just, they would do this over and over and over, where they just did everything unconventionally, where you say, why are you doing this? And it always worked out in their favor. So after a while, you gave the benefit of the doubt to Pete Carroll and his staff that they just know what they're doing. I like Mike McDonald, but I have no idea if he's going to be able to do this. But I do look at a team who I was really high on Seahawks going into last year. I like their talent level with, Metcalf, and a lot of the guys on their defense. They have offensive stars at the skill positions. Don't know yet about Geno, but whatever. I could see a scenario where the Seahawks are contending, I guess, with the San Francisco 49ers for the division. I could also see a scenario where it kind of fall apart without Pete because he had this system that just worked so well. Yes, they've gone from kind of being a team I liked and was high on to I just throw up my hands and say, I have no idea what to make of Seattle.
I think it's a rebuild. And look, the Ravens defensive players have told you that it took a couple years to get familiar.
They got a lot of talent for a rebuild, man. They got a lot of talent to be rebuilding. Yeah. That roster ain't bad.
It's you can have a lot of talent. They're still going to have to learn new systems, new practices, new people. That's sure. So, a rebuild for the Seahawks doesn't mean 4 wins. It means 6 wins to me. Like, I feel like they belong in the six win range. Let's get one more in because I really want our mentions to be destroyed. And let's talk about the change in tone around the Philadelphia Eagles because obviously everybody thought things were going to be coming up roses. I said the other day on, I was hanging out with Mike Golick Jr. on his show, and he asked me about, the NFC East. And I said at the time, I don't know. I think people are presuming the death of the Cowboys, and that makes no sense to me. Like, their regular season was great last year. Their regular season will be great again this year. Like, playoffs are a separate conversation. And then everybody's just presuming that this is going to work out gangbusters. Well, I don't think Kellen Moore has shown anything to deserve the level of, like, Eagles fans weren't scared of Kellen Moore when he was an offensive coordinator. So why are you going to tout him when you got him? And I also think, like, as much as this is just a revolving door of coordinators for the Eagles, I think the Eagles they have more question marks than people want to admit. I'm down on the Eagles.
It's hard to imagine the last time a team completely changed what we think, their perception, what we think about them in 7 games more than the Philadelphia Eagles. They were 10-1 last year. And yeah, we knew they were lucky and point differential and all that said. They're just winning close games. They're not as good as 10-1. But we still were like, they're the Eagles. They're Super Bowl contender. They're going to figure it out. And then those last 7 games were so bad that we come into this offseason saying, are the Eagles a playoff team? Like, probably. They got the talent, but you lost Kelsey, you lost Fletcher Cox. That's not nothing. And the whole Sirianni thing and the way they handled it was so weird, where they basically were like, well, we probably should fire you, but you deserve to stay on. So we're just going to strip all your power, basically. Right. And like, what? Like, if you would have told Eagles fans, this is the conversation we're having, when they were 10-1 after beating the Buffalo Bills in overtime, I believe that's the 10th win for them, you'd just been like, what? Like, no, the Eagles aren't in disarray. We're 10-1. We're heading to another Super Bowl. No, it didn't happen that way. Just an absolute debacle to end the season last year in Philly. And now, yes, they had the talent to be a Super Bowl contender. I think that the roster's still great, but I just don't know. The vibes are all bad for them. We'll see coming. They're one of those September teams where I want to see them in September. I could see a scenario, as outlandish as it sounds, where Sirianni's the first coach fired. Like, what if they start 1-4? I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't think they'd fall apart over the last 7 games last year, counting playoffs either. So we'll see. Yes, Philly is absolutely one of those teams where not just a year ago, but from mid-November last year, we have completely changed how we think of Philly.
I will say this. I don't think that the Eagles are bad. I just don't think that they're automatically Super Bowl contenders. That's the biggest difference. Like, last year, they were Super Bowl contenders, right? This year feels like they're like an 8-win team. Maybe they sneak their way into the playoffs. Like they're good, not great. We're back to that half bottle midday festival Jack Daniels.
You could see. If I told you the Eagles won 13 games this year, you wouldn't be that surprised, would you?
Yeah, I would. I think a lot has to break right for them. Yeah,
really?
They got to fix some of the issues they had getting after the quarterback last year. I think, they've got obviously great offensive weapons, but look, like I said, Eagles fans weren't scared of Kellen Moore. I, as a Raiders fan, wasn't scared of Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore might be one of the most overrated offensive coordinators in the NFL. So and by the way, Kellen Moore I'm saying that coming off of working with two incredible quarterbacks, like Dak and Herbert, right. And neither of them were drastically better because Kellen Moore was in their life. So to me, I think they're overstating that portion of it. All right, let's snake trap before we get out of here. It's Championship Monday, the men's game. By the way, kudos to the women's tournament over the week. I know everybody likes to say this and hop on this. I've had the pleasure of covering women's college basketball in the W for a long time for ESPN. I thought it was an incredible platform over the course of the weekend. I thought Caitlin Clark was amazing. And by the way, incredible that an undefeated champion gets to live on in college basketball. Like that's so incredible. So
Dawn Staley for the Kentucky job.
Oh, let's go. Yeah. Why not?
The men's
Who says
job.
no?
The men's job.
Yeah.
I think it'd be awesome. And I think I think Kentucky should do it. Why not? I guess, unless you get Scott Drew, but there's no better coach in college basketball right now than Dawn Staley. There's just not. Like, she's unbelievable what she's done. She didn't go to Tennessee or UConn. I mean, not that South Carolina was terrible or anything, but she just went to a college and said, I'm gonna build a dynasty. And sure as heck she did. Hats off.
She has. So kudos to that. But we've got tonight the men's championship game. So I thought, in honor of all the championships going, we would snake draft. We were going to snake draft. We each get 3 picks. Best championship games in history. Stone did note that counts championship game 7s, which impacts me because of my childhood. I'm just going to give that little sneak out. Who picked first last week? I don't remember. You know what, Frank? You can pick first this week. I feel like I'll give you that grace.
There is one obvious pick, and I'm going to pass on it. I'm going to be the Jaguars passing on Aiden Hutchinson here. And I'm going to go Super Bowl 49. I have been standing on a hill. I've been trying to build this hill with sand, just so I can get higher and higher and higher. Super Bowl 49 is the greatest NFL game. Seahawks Patriots, the Malcolm Butler game, everything that happened in that game. It was 2 heavyweight champions going at each other. This was Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali in 1971. It was 2 teams in the middle of a dynasty. That game changed NFL history. Brady's unbelievable comeback in the fourth quarter kind of cemented him as the GOAT. There, I get, all the way back to Giants, Colts in 1958 and all that kind of stuff. Super Bowl 49 is the greatest championship game in my mind. I will not be thrown off of this opinion. That, to me, was the epitome of professional football, and therefore, I'm going to give you the obvious pick. And I will take Super Bowl 49.
What is the obvious pick? Is there an obvious pick?
Well, I'm not going to tell you what it is, Fitz, but I'm taking Super Bowl 49. So we'll see if you screw this up.
I might screw this because now you've made it so obvious. I don't like now. Because I had the Patriots Seahawks as honestly as my number 1. So you just took my number 1 off the board. So we agreed on that.
You're with me on this hill.
My number 2 was Giants over Patriots, the helmet catch Super Bowl. Like that to me, when you think ultimate championship games, an undefeated season goes crashing down. And you're not giving me the reaction that makes me think that that's the obvious pick. So now I'm sitting.
No, that was not it.
That is not the obvious pick. Can you give me a hint on the obvious pick? You want to help me a little bit?
You're the right sport, right? Like I think you're the right sport.
Okay, well I've got. All right. That's fine. I'll go the helmet catch as the greatest championship. And fun fact, by the way, I didn't even watch most of that Super Bowl. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I was so tired of watching the Patriots win Super Bowls, I turned on the TV at the end to be like, let's just see how this game ends. As I turn it on, it's just as they start the drive that gives me the helmet catch that gives me the Giants victory. So saved myself hours of time on that. Next up on my list. You've got me really you've got me thinking all over the place. I'll go with another Super Bowl, but man, I don't know. I'm in my feels. Wide right, the Bills losing to the Giants from when I was a kid. That one stood out to me as the next. It was right there. The Bills were such a heavy favorite. They were supposed to win that game. Everybody thought the Bills were going to win that game. Jeff Hostetler and the Giants get the unprecedented Super Bowl victory. So I remember that so vividly from when I was a child. So I give that one my number 2, which means I haven't given you the obvious one. What is the obvious one I'm missing?
If I say the name Vince Young, does that ring a bell to you at all,
okay.
Fitz?
I didn't even go to college football. I didn't even go to college football.
And you are the college football guy, so I was handing it to you on a platter.
I didn't even go to college football.
USC Texas in the Rose Bowl, considered to be the greatest college football game of all time. Just an unbelievable night of football. Two great teams going. That great USC team. Speaking of Pete Carroll, yes, USC Texas should have been the number 1 pick. I get him a number 4. I've already won this draft. I could probably pass on this pick. I probably still win this 3-round draft, but just for fun's sake, I'm going to pass on a lot of college basketball championships. 83 NC State or 85 Villanova. We've all seen some great championship games. Memphis, Kansas might be my favorite NCAA tournament championship game. But since we can add Game 7s here, I'm going to go 2001 World Series. Diamondbacks over the Yankees. Just unbelievable drama. The whole 9/11 had just happened. The Yankees had this great run. That was an unbelievable World Series. Capped off. Randy Johnson comes out of the bullpen. What a night of baseball. I'm still a huge baseball fan. Love it. Diamondbacks, Yankees, Game 7. That championship game will be my third.
I am such a fraud of a human being. Because I spent the time, I even went through and I was reading about old championships in the NBA to think of did I miss a Game 7 and, old championships in college basketball.
Willis Reed,
obviously the Cavs recently coming back from down 3-1 to win. So I had all these on my list, UNLV 103-73 on my list. I had all these things on my list, but now that you've said that, I was standing on the sideline in front of the confetti cannon. I did not know it was the confetti cannon when Alabama beat Georgia in overtime in the
Tua game, right?
And so, Tua came in at halftime, and I was standing in front of the confetti cannon, had no idea, and that thing went off right behind me. I almost peed my pants. It was crazy. And to be standing on the field as that happens and not have even thought about college football in the greatest championship game conversation, I'm embarrassed. I let my family down. I let my mom down. I let God down. I let my country down. I let the show down.
Maybe I'll sharpen up by next week. We'll do this again.
Wow.
We'll skip on USC Texas. Whatever we're drafting, the equivalent of USC Texas will not fall to number 4.
One of the greatest sporting events of all time, and I didn't even put it in
time. I probably should have picked that number 1, but I'm just such a stand for Super Bowl 49 that I could not pass that and let you take it.
I'm embarrassed. CMAC tomorrow, exemplist. I'm back Thursday. Maybe I'll do better. Maybe I'll be better. I don't know. Inside coverage with C. Rob and Jory. I'm going to spend all day watching old college football games. Follow us on social media. Send me flowers or something. I don't know. I'm in my feels now. At Jason Fitz, at Yahoo Schwab, at SJ Rochelle to get the stone. Leave us a 5-star review. Rate, subscribe. Tell your friends, family, enemies. Tell everybody. Hang out with us. And I'm going to spend all week thinking about the regret that I have because Frank just absolutely kicked my ass. Any prediction for tonight's game, Frank? I think I'll go first while you ponder it. Connecticut's going to thump. I think they're going to beat Purdue by 15.
For those who dabble, I like Purdue to cover, but UConn to win. And that's hard because UConn is unbelievable. I just wrote about this morning. Unbelievably, 11-0 against the spread in the last 2 tournaments. You know how hard that is? You know how difficult that is to keep covering spreads when everybody's betting on you and the odds makers like, whatever, 11.5 for the national semifinal. And they're like, okay, well, we'll win by 14, whatever. I will take Purdue to cover. Just maybe my heart's in that because I just want to close.
Yeah, I think we're witnessing one of the most dominant 2-year runs we will ever see and have ever seen in college basketball history and tournament play. So congratulations to Coach Hurley and UConn early because I think they're going to win it all. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next Monday. And maybe I'll remember that college football exists by then. I don't know.